Hello from the newsroom of the Blauville Courier News. This is the last of 5 2016 CN debates. My name is Tom Henry, and I will be moderating this debate. This debate is for the position of Arkansas State Senate District 22, and no one except for CN staff has seen the questions that I'll be asking during this debate. There will not be a live audience for this debate, and the order of opening statements, questions, rebuttal, and closing statements were determined immediately before the debate by a flip of the coin. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for both opening and closing statements. For questions, each candidate gets 2 minutes to answer, and then the first candidate is given 1 minute for rebuttal. All candidates running for this race were invited. Now for the candidates. For the position of Arkansas State Senate District 22, we have candidate number 1, the Republican nominee, Representative Dave Wallace. And candidate number 2, the Democratic nominee, Senator David Burnett. Welcome, candidates. Now for the opening statements. Representative Wallace, you won the toss, so you go first.
Thank you. Tom. Hi, folks. I'm Dave Wallace. You know, the key to being a good legislator is just not how you vote in Little Rock. It's getting out among your people, listening to what the issues are, sitting in their living rooms, sitting on their porches, trying to figure out how they need to be helped and trying to work with them. I was awarded the Distinguished Legislator Award by the Municipal League because of my support for small towns, and I've worked hard the last 2 years as a representative to continue to support our small towns, including Blauville. I'm a strong supporter of our right to bear arms. In fact, I've been endorsed by the NRA with an A rating, whereas my opponent was given a C- rating. Now, he'll tell you that Charleston Hilton gave him an A back in 2008, but that was also 2 years before he became a state senator. I'm pro-life. I've been endorsed by the Right to Life organization here in Arkansas as their candidate of choice. My opponent will tell you that he's pro-life, but time after time he's failed to support pro-life bills. I fought hard to support our religious freedom bills, and I fought hard to protect our churches. And I'm proud that I've supported and co-sponsored a bill that gave our taxpayers a $90 million tax cut.
Senator Burnett, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Tom. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank the Courier News for the opportunity to have this debate. I have served the Mississippi County, Poinsett County, and all of Craighead for the last 42 years. I've been your prosecuting attorney, I've been your circuit judge, and your senator. I have introduced hundreds of bills. Probably the most important bill that I've introduced was the bill that created Big River Steel. It was the largest economic package ever passed in the state of Arkansas, and it was the first bill under Amendment 82. Like my opponent, I am strong supporter of the Second Amendment, and I don't care what the Republican organization gave him in his grade. I support the Second Amendment and always have. I'm also a believer and supporter of pro-life, have been, and I defy my opponent to find a single bill where I voted against pro-life or voted against abortion, voted for abortion rather. I am asking the people to vote for me based upon my experience both in the legislature and as a judge and a prosecutor and as a senator. My opponent, while he claims to have introduced several bills, cannot give you a single bill where he did anything for Mississippi County, Poinsett County, or Craighead County that produced a single job or produced a scintilla of funds for this community. On the other hand, I've done considerable in that area in promoting jobs and finances for this area. Is that time? All right, thank you.
Now for the first question. The job of an Arkansas state senator is no small task. They directly represent over 30,000 Arkansas citizens, deal in very serious issues that affect the lives of all Arkansans and can easily be the difference between new jobs coming here or not. They affect our children's education, our loved ones' health care, our business success or failure due to government taxation, restriction, and red tape. Having said that, what makes you more qualified or better suited for the position than your opponent? Representative Wallace, 2 minutes.
Well, the key point is I'm out talking every day. I'm out sitting with people, listening to people. I'm out in the streets. It's not enough just to go to Little Rock and vote. You've got to be back in your community, listening to everybody, hearing what their needs are, and helping those folks. You know, my opponent said that he had never failed to vote or on an abortion bill, and yet back in 2011 he had a bill that he failed to vote on. And the way we do, if you fail to vote, if you pass, then it's a no vote. And he voted on the Act of 1176 regarding all facilities that perform 10 or more abortions. He passed on that bill. If you pass on the bill, it is the equivalent of a no vote. So I would go back and say that he's not as strong on pro-life as he suggests that he is. Thank you.
Well, back to the vote that Mr. Wallace makes reference to. I'm a lawyer. I swore an oath when I became both a judge and as a state senator that I would support the Constitution of the state of Arkansas and the United States. As a lawyer, the bill he's talking about I knew to be unconstitutional and could not pass the muster of the Supreme Court. In fact, the bill was found to be unconstitutional. Rather than vote for the bill that I knew to be unconstitutional or to vote against the bill, which would have been against my principles, I chose to abstain. And that's a common practice when you see that the vote is going to pass or is going to fail and you are opposed to it one way or the other, then it's a common practice to abstain from voting on that particular issue. And if that's the only thing he's got to say, that I'm weak on pro-life, then I challenge him to find some other issue to discuss, because this is bogus like half the other stuff that he talks about. I listen to what the people in this community say, and I try to deliver to them. But the phony BS about building water parks and community centers and telling people that that's what you're going to do is just bogus BS.
You know, I'll go back to another issue when we talk about abortion. There was an abortion tissue issue, voted 35-0, and once again it appears that he failed to support that, or rather, it did support it. As far as the water parks and those things, we need to steer money and help the town of Blytheville, and I just don't see how it's being helped. It has not been helped the past 6 years. Who's watching out for Blytheville? No one.
I get to rebut that? Okay. Okay.
Second question. What are the biggest problems that District 22 faces at this time? Describe your plan to fix those problems and detail your priorities if elected in November. In other words, what are you going to do for Blytheville and Mississippi County if elected? Senator Burnett.
Well, that's a difficult question. I want to go back to the previous question, and Mr. Wallace talked about 35-0. I don't even know what bill he's talking about, and certainly I have done nothing other than support pro-life. Now, back to the original question of what I would do. I am particularly interested in education. I'm concerned because of the Republican policy. Mr. Wallace's governor, his political party, have announced publicly that they are opposed to and are cutting pre-K education. Statistics show that pre-K educated child is 2 years ahead of one that's not. I am going to do everything I can to restore pre-K to the educational system in this community and this state. I further am a strong supporter of our school system and will try to bring all of the funds I can to Blytheville, Osceola, Leechville, Joyner, and the entire area of northeast Arkansas that I serve. And a moment ago, it was mentioned that there are some 30,000. Actually, it's almost 90,000 people that are in a senatorial district. In addition to the school pre-K funding, I'm particularly interested in making a permanent fix on our library funding and our senior citizens. Last year, I worked very hard to get temporary funding to restore $1 million each to the libraries and to the senior citizens that were cut by the Republicans, who Mr. Wallace represents. I was able to get it back in. I had to do some trading to get a project for Nucor, but I was able to get temporary funding for those two agencies, and my goal next time will be to fund it permanently. There are other things, of course, but in 2 minutes, that's about all I can tell you.
I too support pre-K. I believe that pre-K is very important, and I actually agree with my opponent on that. Regarding the libraries, yeah, I voted to cut across the board 3% on all of our state agencies, and here's why. Folks, every day we have a budget. You have a family, you have a budget. You have a business, you have a budget. Some of us in business have had to cut 15, 20%. There is waste in our state agency. We have allowed it for years to build up, and we should expect our state agencies to be a guardian of our funds. And in cutting them 3%, I feel is justified. Now, the rest of the story is later on we came back and gave back that money to the libraries. But we need our state agencies to be a better guardian of our funds. And I'm going to continue to push that. I believe that we should do tax cuts, pass those back to our taxpayers, and that we should force our state agency, our state government, to operate just like a good business or a good family runs their budget.
Well, the library budget is one of the smallest in state government, $4.5 million. And when you cut $1 million of it, it was like a 20% cut rather than a 3% cut. And I raised Cain in the legislature during the fiscal session to restore that $1 million that the Republicans picked on the weakest agency in there to cut. I'm happy to see that Mr. Wallace is interested in preserving our tax dollars and making sure that they're spent appropriately, but I suggest that cutting the library fund and the senior citizens fund, two of the smallest budgets in the state government, was a colossal mistake and one that they had to go back and correct. And I can go on further, but that's probably my time.
Thank you. This election cycle has produced some very negative campaign literature. Most of them were not officially endorsed or paid for by your two campaigns, but at least one failed to declare who paid for it to be sent out. At my home alone, I received direct mail accusing Representative Wallace's company of hiring an illegal alien from Honduras with no driver's license and a history of reckless driving to drive a bus filled with illegal aliens to a company's job site in Louisiana. It further alleges that the driver crashed the bus into a car and fire truck, killing 3 people, and is charged with negligent homicide. It further alleged that Representative Wallace had his company classified as a disabled veteran company, but instead of hiring disabled veterans, hired illegal aliens from Mexico and Honduras. One also alleges that Representative Wallace was convicted and fined by the Ethics Commission for breaking state law by pocketing campaign donations from a corporation that was more than double the amount allowed by law. Another allegation was that Representative Wallace was guilty of making his top priority the remodeling of the governor's mansion, including a $1,000 toilet. Another piece alleges that Senator David Burnett is lying about Representative Wallace to hide his liberal record, such as sponsoring a bill to abolish the death penalty, voting against protecting our religious liberties, opposing requiring a drug test for welfare recipients, and voting against banning abortion if a heartbeat is detected. Both campaigns have had ethics violation complaints filed against them for allegedly illegal campaign finance. My question is two-part. First, Do you both right now disavow these direct mail pieces sent out in your name and the allegations they make against your opponent? And what response do you give to defend yourself against the allegations made against you? Representative Wallace, 2 minutes.
Well, I don't disavow any of the things that we've said concerning my opponent. They're all true. Regarding the allegations made against me, considering the $1,000 commode, David Burnett voted on the same vote that I did, and he voted the same way I did. And no one came out and said that. And that is a standard appropriation that takes place every couple of years. Regarding the incident in Baton Rouge, my company in Baton Rouge worked over 1,500 people for approximately 6 weeks. The vast majority of those folks, 99%, were Caucasian or were African American. We did not work any illegal immigrants. There's been no proof to that. There's been allegations. There's no proof that we've done that. As far as the bus, my company had nothing to do with that bus. We had nothing to do with that bus driver. And yet they've tried to tie that to me over and over and over.
First of all, I'll respond to Mr. Wallace. I think Mr. Wallace owes an apology to the victims in Louisiana for his company's gross negligence. And further, while I didn't send out the hit mail, as you call it, I certainly think it bears looking into to a greater detail, and I would expect Mr. Wallace to deny it, or at least have his lawyer deny it. And as far as the vote he said I took on the gold toilet, and by the way, I didn't send that out either. It was done by others and not me. I did vote for that comprehensive bill that included the mansion repair, and the reason I voted for it was that in order to get my bill for Nucor to reduce a gross building requirement down to one that Nucor could live with. And based upon my swapping the vote, Nucor now is building a $230 million expansion that they could not have done, couldn't even bid on it among the other Nucor companies without relief from that strenuous building code. I don't deny voting for that. Now, I can't remember exactly what, Mr. Wallace has said that everything he said about me is true. Well, you need to look at the little rag sheet that he sent out and had his surrogates passing around town on the south side of Blytheville. And by the way, he didn't send it on the other side of Blytheville. It was addressed to African American voters. And in it, they made total and complete, I'm not going to say misstatements, I'm going to say lies. They lied about monies that I was supposed to have given to Arkansas State. I haven't given one dime to Arkansas State in the entire time I've been in the legislature. I gave sizable amounts of money to the community colleges in both Blytheville and Mark Tree. I gave sizable amounts of money to the Dice Colony project. Am I running out of time? But that's just total lies, total misstatements, total disregard, and trying to paint me as some kind of person that didn't care about my community and didn't do anything for my community. And I challenge him to say what he's done for Blytheville, Manila, Osceola, or Leechville. He can't give you 1 cent he's given.
I'll give you back some change. You know, we just sat here, and my opponent just admitted to hitting me with, people that support him, hitting me with an allegation about a $1,000 commode, and he just admitted that he voted for the same thing. That's just, typical smear campaign. But, I go back to what have I done for our people? I have helped hundreds, if not thousands of folks with Medicaid, with DHS. I can name names I'm not going to name on TV that I have gone into. I've sat down, I've spent time with those folks. If you need help, if you call my phone number, I answer the phone. Now I challenge you. You call his phone number and you see who answers the phone. You call him anytime you want to. Call me anytime. I will return the phone call. You get him to return a phone call. I'm here to help our people. I have done it. Thanks.
So before I go to the next question, for clarifications, neither one of you disavow, right? The mail outs in the allegation. Okay.
I didn't send them, but I
No.
think it's true.
No, I understand that. I said that in the question just for clarity. I didn't accuse either one of you of sending them out. Okay. Okay, number 4. The cost of Medicaid under the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare, is rising much faster than expected in many states, and those rising expenses are causing many in Arkansas to worry. This is due in part because enrollees are getting sicker than originally planned for, and drug costs are also higher than projected. Therefore, at least 3 states that participated in Medicaid expansion, Arkansas, Kentucky, and Ohio, have even considered requiring Medicaid recipients to pay more towards their health insurance. Opponents say that could lead to tens of thousands of poor people being dropped from coverage rolls. Since 2010, the federal government has been picking up the entire tab for new enrollees, but states will begin paying a 5% share in January, and that will rise to 10% by 2020. My question to you is this. Do you support forcing those on Medicaid to pay a larger portion of the cost? If yes, how much? If no, then where specifically does the money come from? Senator Burnett, 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, I'd like to start off by saying this. When Mr. Wallace ran for state representative, he ran on a policy of we're going to do away with Obamacare. You vote for me and I'll vote to kick Obamacare out. He lied to the voters and turned around and voted for Public Works or Arkansas Works. I supported it. I thought it was the thing to do for almost 300,000 Arkansans to give them some health care. I recognize that in 2020 and maybe even in the next legislative session, we're going to have a horrible time trying to find out where the money comes from, particularly when our governor has already announced that he plans to reduce the budget by $100 million tax relief, which I'm always for reducing taxes. But we have tremendous highway problems. We're going to have to fund the highways. We're going to have to fund Arkansas Works, which the governor came out with and supported, and I think he did it wisely. I don't know where the money's going to come from. It's going to be a difficult problem in the budget review to figure out how we're going to refund that and refund all of the other agencies and state government that desperately need funding when we're going to reduce taxes by $100 million. I frankly we'll study the problem and we'll try to come up with an answer, but to give you a 2-minute answer on how we're going to do it, I can't do that. Maybe Mr. Wallace can.
It's going to come out of the budget. I mean, that the problem is, state of Arkansas, rightfully so, before we adjourn, we have to have a balanced budget. So we're going to sit down and we're going to figure out, and I agree with my opponent. We've got to sit down and figure out, and we're going to make some hard choices. I made a hard choice the last time when I voted for Arkansas Works because we had money on the table that we needed for our highways. And I would not have supported that. If that bill would not have passed, we would have lost that money. We would still end up paying the same amount, but we would not have received the money that we got back from the federal government. And that was a very hard choice, and that's why I voted that way.
Am I in the rebuttal phase? Well, I don't know what he's talking about. Our highways needed money, and that's why he voted. It didn't have anything whatsoever to do with Arkansas Works. The highway budget was entirely separate from that, and I don't know what he's talking about. I don't think he does, but I do agree with this sentiment that it's going to be a very difficult decision on how we go about budgeting and what agencies are going to be cut. Is it going to be schools? Is it going to be prisons? Is it going to be libraries and old folks? I don't see how we can have a $100 million tax. If the governor proposes it and can show me how to do it in revenue stabilization or the balanced budget, I'll vote for the tax cut. And I'll make that pledge right now. But to answer your question specifically on how we're going to fund Arkansas Works, I don't know. But we will have a very difficult task in budget. I don't think Mr. Wallace is on budget. I'm on budget, and we'll work very hard through the 90-day session to figure that out.
Since June of last year, Governor Asa Hutchinson, Attorney General Leslie Rutledge, Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin have all assured Arkansans that open carry is allowed in the state of Arkansas. Hutchinson said, "I don't want a society in which everybody is openly carrying, so I think it's not something you encourage. I think you have to evaluate it in terms of what the constitutional rights are and what the law is." Blytheville Chief of Police Ross Thompson points out that the previous Attorney General stated that Act 746 did not allow for the open carry of firearm in Arkansas. However, without a single word changed in the law, the current Attorney General has publicly stated it is legal to openly carry a firearm in Arkansas. Regardless of their opinions, confusing, ambiguous laws are difficult to enforce. Do you support open carry, and how would you recommend cleaning up the language in Act 746 to make it less ambiguous? Representative Wallace, 2 minutes.
I do support open carry. Our forefathers gave us a right to bear arms. It's critical and essential to our way of life. If we ever give up that right, then I believe the criminals will have the weapons and the law-abiding citizens won't. That's why I'm such a strong opponent of our right to bear arms. That's why the NRA has given me an A rating. As far as cleaning it up, we're going to go back in and sit down. The problem we've got now is we have some judges that view it one way, we have other judges that view it another way. We've got to make it much more clear. And I'm not at this point really sure how we're going to do that. But we got to sit down in a group, as a group of legislators, and sort through that, because we've got to make that language more clear.
Well, it was interesting to hear Mr. Wallace say he was an opponent to the Second Amendment. I think he misspoke. I support the Second Amendment, and to answer your question specifically, as a prosecuting and as a judge, I saw thousands and thousands of cases and see them every day in the newspaper where teenagers are shooting each other. I think it's a dangerous thing for our society to have open carry. I strongly believe in the Second Amendment, which provided that you could not prevent citizens from bearing arms to keep and maintain a well-organized militia. Now, through the generations and centuries, that has been debated on just exactly what it meant. But as far as my support of the Second Amendment, I believe in that 100%. I believe Americans have the right to keep and bear arms, but whether or not we're going to strap them on and walk up and down the streets and the highways with it, I've got serious questions about that, and maybe that's why I got a C. But I'm not ashamed of that. I think it makes common sense.
If I misspoke, I am a strong supporter of our right to bear arms. I didn't realize I had said that. But throughout our history, for years we've had open carry. You look back generation after generation, and we have, over the last 2 decades, have slowly grown towards more and more restrictive. We cannot infringe on our right to bear arms. That's one of the most critical parts of our government, and yet every day the federal government is taking more and more steps to do that, and we've got to work hard to resist that.
Now for the closing statements. Again, Representative Wallace, you won, so you go first.
Folks, I remind you again, I am supported by the NRA. I was given an A versus a C minus. I'm very clearly the person that's been endorsed, so I'm obviously the person that is supporting the right to bear arms. Pro-life. I've been endorsed by our pro-life agencies. Every vote, I've voted 7 times and supported all 7 laws that help strengthen our pro-life issues. I'm going to be out in the area. I'm going to be talking with you. I'll be listening to you. I will not be an empty suit. I will be with you, hearing your problems. I'll carry your problems back to our state agencies, and I will fight for you. I have a reputation for doing that, and I will continue to do that. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Cougar News again for the opportunity to be here and to have this exchange of ideas. I, too, of course, have already told you that I support the Second Amendment and pro-life, and we can beat a dead horse to death, and I'm not going to promise pie in the sky like Mr. Wallace does. But I have been around for 42 years serving the people of this community. You know me. You know you can talk to me. My phone is always available. Where he gets this BS about me not answering the phone or returning phone calls, maybe it was one of his buddies, I don't know, but I certainly return my phone calls. Always have. I'm in business, and when you call me, I answer. And I'll be around talking to you, and I'll be inquiring about what the issues are. I work with your county government, with your city mayors, with your city officials, and he talks about helping people. Well, in the 2 years he's been there, he claims to have done 100 people on Social Security disability. Well, I do that every day for a living. I help people on Social Security matters, workers' comp matters, and whatever. But I certainly would appreciate your vote. I think by far, if you check our record, check my history and my service to this country and to this community, you'll find that I'm by far the best candidate for this position. And I would appreciate your continued support and your vote. Thank you very much.
Once again, we at the Blytheville Courier News would like to thank you for watching. We'd like to thank the candidates for participating in our debate. Don't forget to tune in or watch the other debates as well. You'll find them on our Facebook page and soon on our website, www.blythevillecourier.com. We hope that you found this series of debates valuable to you in helping make a choice for whom you will want to vote for in these elections. And as always, from the Blytheville Courier News, we thank you and hope you have a great day.